What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to be doing an updated Senate map. I think that the Senate will kind of be one of the most important overlooked elections of the 2020 election cycle. Typically, everyone focuses on the presidential race, but I think that the Senate could actually prove to be more important just in terms of getting legislation and policy passed. Because I think that the House is not going to be competitive at all, but I think the Senate is going to be very, very competitive. So I just want to dive right in. I filled in some of the states that I think will be likely because I don't want to waste my time focusing on them and kind of going to the 10 Senate seats that I think will matter the most going into 2020. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so right here. Just hit the button right here. If this is the first time looking at my channel, I would just love for you to look at some of my past videos just to check out what I'm about. I'm going to be making a video every single day until the election. We're 69 days out. The election is only going to get crazier, and you can hear all the news, all the latest stories, all the latest election predictions, all the latest everything here. So please do so. So right now we're at 45-45. I think it's going to be a very, very close election. All right, so just jumping right into the lean Democratic states. The first lean Democratic state I think is going to be the state of Arizona. Right now we have Mark Kelly versus Martha Mcsally. And Martha Mcsally did not win her Senate race in 2018. She ran against Kristen Sinema and lost. However, she was appointed to the Senate seat by the governor, Governor Ducey of Alexander, of Arizona after John McCain died. So I think this was a very interesting choice. From a Republican perspective, I don't really agree with it. Martha Mcsally lost. The voters of Arizona rejected her. However, the governor put her in a position of power. I think I understand that. Like, look, it was a close election, so 50% of Arizonians would have voted, or like almost 50% would have went Martha Mcsally. The other 50% wanted Kristen Sinema. So why not just get like half and half? However, Mark Kelly is a stronger candidate than Kristen Sinema, and I think President Trump will help Martha Mcsally in that I think Arizona is still like maybe a slightly more Republican. However, Mark Kelly is more of a moderate Democrat. He's an astronaut, very popular, not very many negatives against him, so I think will be able to win this race. And I mean, Martha Mcsally just is not a very popular candidate. I don't think she's very charismatic as well. And I have Colorado as a likely Democratic state just because I think even though John Hickenlooper is in scandal, I think that Cory Gardner just is not a very popular figure in the state. And it's a Democratic state. I think that on the presidential level, it's going to be likely Democratic as well. So next up, I'm going to move on to Minnesota. Minnesota, I had in the likely Democratic characterization. However, I think this is a move to a lean Democratic characterization because just looking at these statewide Minnesota polls, I've seen some that have it tied on the presidential level, and the Democratic incumbent Tina Smith is only up by like 2 or 3 points, and this is I think in 2 or 3 polls I've seen this. So Jason Lewis, I mean, he's not going to be a heavily funded Republican challenger. I don't think that the RNC is going to invest a lot of money, but I think that just statewide, Minnesota is one of those states that's trending towards the right. I mean, Donald Trump almost won it in 2016, and I think he could have a similar margin there in 2020 that could help Jason Lewis down ballot. Amy Klobuchar in 2018 won the state by a landslide. However, I think in 2020 it's going to be different. Amy Klobuchar is not as popular as Tina Smith, and 2020 is not going to be a Democratic wave year, at least to the extent that we saw in 2018. I think the Democrats will do well, but I don't think they're going to do as well as they did in 2018. Lastly, I want to look at the state of Michigan. I think Michigan is also going to be a lean Democratic state for a lot of the same reasons that Minnesota is. We have a Democratic incumbent, and we've recently seen that the Trump campaign and the RNC has kind of pulled some money out of Michigan. So even though Donald Trump won it in 2016, I think they're increasingly seeing with the poll numbers and different data points that's going to be hard to win on the presidential level and therefore hard to win on the Senate level. I think John James is a strong Republican candidate. However, I do think it's going to be hard for him to win in a traditionally Democratic state, even though Trump did win it in 2016. Trump does not need it to win in 2020, so I think he's going to more focus his resources on states that he won in 2016 that he thinks will be easier to keep. Next up, going to the lean Republican states, South Carolina. This has actually become as a surprise to me. Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison are neck and neck in this race, and I think that Jamie Harrison has um, run a very, very good campaign, and I really just think that Lindsey Graham um, is just not as popular as he was previously. I think he's flip flop on Trump. I don't think he would be able to last if he was still anti-Trump. So I think it was a smart move politically. But I think some Republicans might be able to see through that. And I don't think any Republicans are going to vote for Jamie Harrison, but they might just elect not to vote for Lindsey Graham, and that could be enough. I haven't seen a poll where Lindsey Graham is going over 50%. I still think he's going to win the state because I think President Trump is going to campaign for him. Right now, I mean, Trump and Lindsey Graham are buddies, so I think this is going to help him. But still, I mean, Jamie Harrison is running a very well-funded campaign. So we will see about that. Next up, I want to go to the special election in the state of Georgia. I think the state will definitely be a lean Republican state. This is kind of a crazy race because it's a jungle primary with Kelly Loeffler, Doug Collins, and several Democrats. No Democrat has kind of proven themselves to kind of be the leader. This race will not be decided on November the 3rd because there's multiple Republicans and Democrats running, so none of them are going to get over 50%. And the two biggest challengers, which I expect will be a Republican and a Democrat, will face off then in December. Right now, I have Joe Biden winning, and if Joe Biden wins, I think that a lot of the Democrats will stay home for this special election. There's going to be a lot of Republican energy, so I think the Republicans are going to try hard to keep the seat, and I think they will, whether it's Kelly Loeffler or Doug Collins. I'd thought in the past it was definitely going to be Doug Collins, but Kelly Loeffler has been showing some strength in the polls, so I think it could be either one of them, but I think either one of them won't have too much trouble keeping the seat. Next up, we're going to go to the Georgia race at large. I think this is going to be a little bit closer, but I think David Perdue is a pretty popular incumbent senator, and I don't think he'll have too much trouble against Jon Ossoff, even considering that Jon Ossoff is not necessarily experienced. I think being an outsider could help him, but I think David Perdue is going to outperform Trump in the state of Georgia. I think we've seen even with the 2018 midterms that Georgia is increasingly becoming more competitive. It's trending leftward, but I think David Perdue has established himself enough as kind of a trustworthy, popular candidate in Georgia that we could even see some Biden voters vote for Perdue. So I think that David Perdue will for sure outperform Trump. Next up, I want to go to the state of Montana. I do think that Montana will still be a lean Republican state. I think it might be between 2, 3, or 4 points, so still pretty close in the grand scheme of things, especially in a state like Montana. I think Steve Bullock is going to put up a great fight. I mean, he won the Senate seat in the state of Montana, which is historically Republican. However, having President Trump on the ballot and campaigning for Steve Daines, just kind of like how Trump's going to be campaigning for Lindsey Graham, I think this will be able to push Steve Daines across the finish line. And I just don't see in 2018, Jon Tester barely won, but he was also the incumbent. So I really see it's hard for me to see that Steve Daines, a Republican incumbent in a Republican state, losing, even though that Steve Bullock was a pretty popular governor. In study after study and election after election, we see that voters vote differently on the national and governor's level. I mean, they're smart in that way. I do think that Steve Daines will be able to keep the seat. Lastly, going to Iowa, I've debated if this is a lean Republican seat or still a tilt Republican seat. We've seen some polls where it's tied. It's within the margin of error on both sides. Right now, I still think that Joni Ernst holds an advantage, and I think she's going to win by just at 2 points. So I'm really kind of just grasping at straws differentiating between this characterization. But I think that President Trump's going to help her for sure. Trump won Iowa by 9-10 points in 2016. I expect him to win the state by 5 points in 2020. So I think that Trump is going to help Joni Ernst. I think Joni Ernst is going to underperform President Trump. However, I still think that as a Republican in a state that is increasingly becoming more Republican because kind of Trump's appeal to the white working class voter, I think that they're going to win it. Next up, going to the tilt Democratic states. I had Maine as a lean Democratic state, but I looked at the comments and I actually did more research on the state of Maine. And I do agree that I think that Susan Collins actually has more of a shot than I think she had previously. I mean, the polls have this between 2 and 4 points in the averages, but I really could see some kind of moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats vote for Susan Collins. I could definitely see some Biden voters vote for Susan Collins. I mean, George H.W. Bush endorsed Susan Collins. I don't know how much this will help, but I definitely could see it going to Susan Collins, but just because of the margin of the polls and because Maine is a traditionally Democratic seat, I'm going to put it in the tilt Democratic column right now. So right now we're at 50 seats for the Republicans and 49 seats for the Democrats. Just before I get to the final state, which I think will be the most important state, I want to look at the predicted odds. Right now, they think that the betting odds have the Democrats ahead for taking control of the Senate in 2020, which I think is pretty interesting. Previously, before like in all of 2019, all of 2020, it was pretty kind of clear, I would say, that the Republicans would keep it. It was leaning towards the Republicans. However, right now, that is not the case. And it's still very, very competitive, a lot more competitive than where a lot of people see the presidential election. But the Democrats are favored right now. And also, if we look at the models too, but it's not definitely not as skewed as it is on the presidential level. So it's definitely still going to be safe. Right now, I really think North Carolina is a pure toss-up on the Senate level. In my last video, I expressed that I think Donald Trump has a slight advantage in the state of North Carolina as a tilt Republican seat on the presidential level. But Tom Tillis is simply not as popular as Trump is. And in fact, Tillis kind of, if you're kind of looking from a hardcore Republican perspective, he kind of has flip-flopped. At first, he was against Trump declaring a national emergency at the border to get funding for his wall, but then he kind of flip-flopped on that when he realized that his Republican constituents were going to punish him for that. So looking at it right now, I still think it's a tilt Democratic state just because of the governor's race. Roy Cooper is going to win the governor's race by, I think, between 4 and 5 points. And while I still think Trump can win this state, I think on the Senate level, when you don't have a very popular incumbent Republican, and I mean, you have kind of a decently popular Democrat, I think that Roy Cooper and Cal Cunningham could both win the seat, even if Trump does win it. I have the most confidence in Roy Cooper winning out of all these three races, but I really think that the Senate race and the presidential race are kind of pure toss-ups at this point. So I really hope that y'all like this video. Please subscribe here if you haven't, and be on the lookout for new videos. Like, comment on what you thought of this video. So thanks, guys.